Presidential Suite. Welcome to Ritz-Carlton Hotel. What a pleasant surprise was awaiting the head of state in Vienna. In memories to remain, the opposition once again stated about the responsibility of authorities and personal responsibility of the President Nazarbayev for the bloody events in Zhanaozen. Passionate construction crew. 100 hours of work at the construction site and you are the owner of fully furnished apartment.
Vlast KZ на канале kplus.
Hello, you're watching Vlast KZ on KplusTV channel.
Жанаузенский синдром настиг президента Назарбаева и в Австрии.
The Zhanaozen syndrome caught up with the President Nazarbayev even in Austria during his official visit. It seems that it will accompany him everywhere until the start of vindication process of convicted Zhanaozen oil workers and opposition politician Vladimir Kozlov. The head of state was again asked unpleasant questions such as, you stated that demands of strikers were justified, then why 13 oil workers and Vladimir Kozlov were sent to jail, whereas 2,000 fired oil workers who were on strike still can't find a job? Meanwhile, the working-class heroes of the Austrian Socialist Party were chanting explicit statements. The head of the state was able to forget the stress of the first day in the five-star Ritz-Carlton Hotel, where everything reminded him of his home, from investments and the owner to the students in the lobby greeting him with a smile instead of unpleasant questions. Just like in the hit of all times Hotel California, sang by Eagles, this hotel is such a lovely place where in the suite of the host everything is set for a feast.
Такое милое место. В покоях хозяина все готово для пира.
Потолок из 19 столетия в центре.
12 months are portrayed at the ceiling, where these four pictures depict four seasons.
Отображают времена года.
This kaleidoscope of time decorates the office room of Presidential Suite in Vienna Ritz-Carlton. Luxurious suite for VIPs is over 150 square meters. It includes the bedroom, offices, lounges, its own library, several bathrooms and even a small kitchen. These are very interesting doors here, which are covered with wallpaper, as in the Austrian Empire times. Last week, the President of Kazakhstan, Nursultan Nazarbayev, stayed in this grand suite for 6,500 euros per night, plus four more less luxurious suites for his security and entourage. Five-star hotel offers its guests the swimming pool, fitness room, a restaurant, several bars and top-class service. The cheapest room at the hotel costs 400 euros per night. Nursultan Nazarbayev checked in Vienna Ritz-Carlton on October 21st and stayed there for 3 days, not by an accident. The flags outside the main entrance were switched to flags of Kazakhstan. Police and security services of President inspected every room and put a cordon. The selected representatives of Kazakh community and students lined up in the lobby to greet the national leader. Then President Nazarbayev paid an official visit to Hofburg Palace, where he met with the Austrian counterpart Heinz Fischer. One could tell that the Kazakh leader didn't fly to Europe empty-handed. In fact, he brought a substantial number of interesting economic proposals for Austrian investors, yet the official visit strictly followed the protocol. Following the red carpet, the presidents got down to business. Kazakh-Austrian relations evolved at the dawn of independence, and since then the trade turnover has only been growing, said the president of Austria, Heinz Fischer. Last year it grew by 50%. Kazakh national leader returned the favor, yet in the end he led the conversation back to the main issue, the oil and money.
Австрия является крупнейшим партнером в Европе.
Austria is our largest partner in Europe and the fourth largest partner overall. In turn, Kazakhstan is Austria's key partner in our region, in major part because Kazakhstan's oil makes up 37% of oil consumption in Austria.
37% потребления нефти поставляется из нашей страны.
Democracy in exchange for oil. This is what outraged the Austrian leftists during the official visit of Nursultan Nazarbayev in their country. At a press conference, the president of Kazakhstan failed to avoid awkward questions. Leader of the leftist Socialist Party, Sonia Grush, purposefully attended the meeting in order to learn the truth about the tragedy of Zhanaozen firsthand. After all, she was disappointed with the response.
He claimed that the riots that have been, or the uprisings that have been in Zhanaozen, that this was only a handful of criminals, which again is not true. We know that it was upset workers and their families. The police shot on the demonstration, killing women, children, not having any problem about this. There is so all these things everything that I said, there is evidence for that. There are videos about this, there are reports about it, human rights organizations.
The next day, Austrian socialists tried to get a response in a different way outside the building of the Federal Economic Chamber where both presidents were supposed to arrive. The presidential cortege was greeted with a real picket with banners and megaphones involved. Nazarbayev is a murderer, Fischer is a hypocrite. Members of Austrian Socialist Party chanted Nazarbayev is a murderer of oil workers, Fischer is a hypocrite, and waved banners with slogans in German, English and Kazakh languages, calling to release convicted Zhanuzyan oil workers. The police cordoned off a dozen activists, but mostly didn't interfere with the protest action. According to the protesters, they came to the economic chamber to protest against business transactions with the bloody regime and encourage Austrian businessmen not to involve with the Kazakhstan authorities.
I'm very angry about the Austrian government and especially Heinz Fischer, the Austrian president, to work together with a bloody dictator, Sultan Nazarbayev. I'm very angry that many Austrian capitalists want to invest in Kazakhstan, make money, especially out of the oil. I think it's dirty money.
Leader of Austrian Socialists, Sonia Grush, even managed to get inside the building which hosted an Austrian-Kazakh business forum and exposed the poster right in front of both presidents demanding to release the oil workers. Yet she was immediately escorted out by police. Kazakh leader gave no sign. He was cheerful and indulged in historical studies.
Кому неизвестному Казахстану Австрия впервые открыла кредитную линию.
Austria was indeed the first country to open a credit line to an unknown Kazakhstan. As a symbol of the new state, we've built a Marco Polo hotel with these money. That was the old name of the five-star hotel, which first appeared in the history of our country and symbolized a new era.
Символом новой эпохи.
Nazarbayev uses hotels as a milestones of relations with Austria for a reason. Ritz-Carlton, where he stayed this time, symbolized a new level of Kazakh business and authority. According to official sources, the owner of the luxurious five-star hotel in the heart of historical center is the company called Verny Capital, owned by Kazakh billionaire Bulat Utimuratov. On official website of the hotel, president of the Ritz-Carlton, Hervé Humla, said that he was proud that Verny Capital was chosen to manage this hotel. The hotel was opened after a long renovation in August of 2012. The ribbon was cut by the mayor of Vienna himself, which clearly indicates fairly good relationship of the new owner with the Austrian authorities. Vienna Ritz consists of 4 integrated buildings, 2 of which are architectural monuments dated back to the 13th century. Expensive and long-term project cost Kazakhstan investors 120 million euros. However, the money is not the main issue in this business transaction, says the real estate agency director Michael Spies. It is the latest trend to restructure the old buildings in the center of Vienna to luxurious hotels. Michael says that the main problem during implementation of such projects is to get permissions from local authorities.
120 Millionen Euro gehabt.
The hardest part is to get the permits from the local authorities, which takes quite a while. Originally, the Shangri-La hotel chain planned to buy it, but they changed their minds and it remained empty for 6 months until the current owners came around. Can you imagine all the expenses if the hotel utilities alone cost 350,000 euros per month? Enormous investments will not bring immediate profits, says Michael. It is rather a trendy project because the income from the room rental will be no more than 1% of the total investment per year. Yet Vienna is undervalued these days compared to other European capitals, which only increases the price of real estate, says the realtor. That's what attracts the investors from former CIS countries to Austria who are willing to make money on selling their property in time. This year, the amount of sales transactions on hotels alone went over 350 million euros. In fact, the origins of the money is not questioned, simply not to ruin the business, says the expert. The laws in Austria work indeed. Should anyone have a suspicion about the origin of money, he or she is entitled to appeal to the appropriate authorities and they in turn may initiate an investigation. But in reality, nobody comes to the hotel with a bag of money raising suspicions. In fact, I cannot recall a single business transaction when someone asked for the origin of the money. The leader of the Austrian Socialist Party, Sonia Grush, analyzing official visit of Kazakh president, noted that the elites share the interests while the interests of citizens are not taken into account.
Austrian politicians and the Austrian capitalists. Between them, and the Kazakhian regime. So this is a deal between two rich elites, in both cases on the backs of their people. The deal is, we give you nice economic deals, that's what Kazakhstan is saying. We give you oil, we give you, I don't know, copper and other national resources.
The official negotiations resulted in more than 20 signed agreements, including commercial ones for supplying raw materials from Kazakhstan and investment projects on its territory. The response of Austrian President Heinz Fischer was quite obvious, as he promised to support the candidacy of Kazakhstan and UNESCO World Heritage Committee and help to expand cooperation with the European Union. Fischer is coming to an end of his second presidential term, and perhaps due to successful negotiations after his retirement, he might join the number of associates in the Social Democratic camp, working as advisors for Oktober presidential administration, including Gerhard Schröder, Alfred Gusenbauer and Tony Blair.
Неофициальным итогом визита казахстанского президента в Австрию
An official outcome of the visit of Kazakhstan's president to Austria could become Bulatu Timuratov's return to public office, who with his Verny Capital has obviously pleased the head of the state. This year, the non-staff advisor to the president returned to the list of richest people in the world. Forbes magazine estimated his fortune at $500 million. The Moscow Ritz-Carlton Hotel became a new acquisition of his group, which was brought from another Kazakh company, the Capital Partners.
У другой казахстанской компании Capital Partners.
Lately, the developing company accumulates enormous funds, $2 billion or even more, says economist Eugen Askarov. Thus, according to his estimates, Capital Partners really wants to fulfill its obligations before Kazkommertsbank, which finances its big projects. A week earlier, on the website of the Respublika newspaper, a letter was published stating that Kazkom is experiencing hard times, and according to the figures, soon it will have to ask the government for aid, just like the BTA Bank and the Alliance did before. Last week, the managing director of the bank, Timchenko, tried to refute this information. But according to the messages sent to the Respublika, he didn't respond to questions related to a constant fall of share prices, scandal around the theft of funds from Shymkent branch of the bank, as well as the question about the unknown privileged shareholders. Meanwhile, according to the author of the letter, the founder of Kazkom Bank, Nurjan Subhanberdin, doesn't want to understand the hints from the top, which advise him to give up his business and step aside. At least he has been able to avoid giving a direct answer. There is also an opinion that there is nothing dramatic about the current situation of Kazkom in comparison, of course, to the last years. The golden age of Kazkom ended in the middle of 2000, and it is nothing like it was during glorious 90s and early 2000, which represented, just like Astana Holding and other brands, the Kazakhstan economic reforms. It seems some explanation of this could be found in the audio pages uploaded by user Tambov Saratov. Leave politics. When the right time comes, you will enter it. But now don't get involved in politics. I pushed out Subhanberdin and all of the rest of them. They are all under my control. Next on Vlast KZ. In memories to remain, the opposition once again stated about the responsibility of authorities and personal responsibility of the President Nazarbayev for the bloody events in Zhanaozen. Passionate construction crew. 100 hours of work at the construction site and you are the owner of fully furnished apartment. Vlast KZ will return in a couple of minutes.
Vlast KZ.
Главные события в Казахстане. Достоверные факты. Эксклюзивные комментарии. Читайте в Казахстане информационно-аналитический портал «Республика». Чтобы обойти блокировки, воспользуйтесь доменом respublikas.info. Вы окажетесь на так называемом прокси-портале. Специально разработанные канадскими специалистами по интернет-технологиям, прокси-порталы помогают пользователям получать информацию в тех странах, где блокируют интернет-ресурсы. В Китае, Иране, в Казахстане. Вы принимаете условия использования системы и попадаете на страницу информационно-аналитического портала «Республика». Материалы интернет-портала также доступны пользователям всемирной сети Facebook. facebook.com/respublika.kaz. Если вы хотите поделиться информацией, вам есть что рассказать, звоните в редакцию «Республики». Наши телефоны в Казахстане +7 727 273 92 95, в Москве +7 495 621 87 03.
Новости Казахстана на казахском языке смотрите в 21:00 и далее каждый нечетный час. Новости Казахстана на русском языке в 22:00 и далее каждый четный час. Новости Казахстана на английском языке смотрите в 16:30, 17:30, 18:30 и 19:30 со вторника по субботу. Время Астаны. Изготовление и размещение рекламы на канале KplusTV.
Как заявила супруга политика Алия Турсбекова,
The deadline for appeal of Vladimir Kozlov's case ended this past week. According to politician's wife Alia Turusbekova, the court in fact stole from them a week worth of time by late handing over the copy of the sentence, so they had to file an appeal on tight deadlines. The appeal case will be reviewed within a month or two from the date of submission of the statement. Alia says that Vladimir Kozlov is a realist and he does realize that the upcoming appellate hearing will be the same circus just like the previous trial. Therefore, his associates and relatives will turn to the Human Rights Committee of the UN for help.
Комитет по правам человека при ООН.
Meanwhile, the opposition politicians held a press conference in Almaty during which they announced that authorities and President Nazarbayev personally are responsible for the bloody events in Zhanaozen. The tragedy in Zhanaozen and Shetpe, causes and consequences of the bloodshed, results of the trial proceedings. This was the title of the last week's public hearings where the committee members presented the initial results of their work. One can go and strike protest or raise his head up in this country, even if one is deceived, robbed and humiliated. Even if they are going to shoot you, just sit tight and don't move. Squat down and put your hands behind the back of your head. This is what we learned from Zhanaozen. This is exactly the kind of people the government wants us to be. The trials are over, however, new details keep coming to surface regarding the tragedy in Zhanaozen. Abzal Kuspanov, a lawyer from Uralsk, presented his findings at a round table. According to his sources, on December 16, 2011, 97 policemen were involved in shooting people. However, only 5 of them were brought to trial. It was established during the trial that 68 out of 74 victims received gunshot wounds. However, both the prosecutor's office and the court turned a blind eye to this fact. It was established by a court that 4 out of 74 victims received gunshot wounds at night. This is an important fact because the shooting began at 12:30 p.m. on December 16th and lasted until 1 p.m. After that, the people ran away and the curfew was imposed. Police was not supposed to use arms during curfew. It means that those people were shot down on purpose. Shalpana Tikeva is the wife of Duisen Naraftin, the oil worker who had been on strike for 8 months. She's the only one who made it to Zhanaozen to attend the round table. All that time, Shalpan was a witness to a strike, then a shooting and the trials that followed. She believes that it was the government that provoked the December bloodshed. She asks authorities not to ignore Zhanaozen and Shetpe residents. According to the official version, 12 people were wounded in Shetpe, but this is an official version. Now Shetpe residents have to face the problems on their own. They didn't even receive compensations. It was promised that the bereaved families will get around $6,600 and the families of the wounded will get $3,300. I really want the public commission to come to Shetpe as well. The people are in need of moral and psychological support. Residents of both Zhanaozen and Shetpe are still under pressure. While the public hearings were held in Almaty, the American newspaper Washington Examiner published an address of Kazakhstan community representatives to U.S. administration and civil community. The article came out under the support of the Human Rights Foundation. In their open letter, the authors threw a spotlight on the events in Zhanaozen, unfair trial verdicts, and asked that U.S. administration apply a so-called Magnitsky law to high officials of Kazakhstan. Activists of the initiative group Lukpan Akhmedyarov and Bakhidjan Torigozhina met last week on U.S. soil with the Senate and Congress representatives. It's a 50-50 when it comes to Zhanozhen list. There are two camps within the State Department. The first is focused on economic priorities. The second is more concerned with human rights and political affairs. According to the authors of the open letter, the president, Nursultan Nazarbayev, tops the blacklist of those responsible for last year's December events. Right after him is an ex-head of presidential administration Aslan Musin, then President's son-in-law Timur Kulibayev and ex-Prime Minister Karim Masimov. Judges, police investigators and officials from law enforcement are also on the list. If the White House adopts the Zhanozhen Act, the people on the list would be banned from entering the U.S. territory and their assets in American banks will be arrested. Yerlan Kaliyev, the public observer, says that the mechanism for adopting this kind of laws has been developed already. An example is the Jackson-Vanik Amendment and the Magnitsky law under discussion now. Sergei Magnitsky, the Russian attorney, revealed embezzlement from the state budget totaling $175 million. He was later arrested on alleged charges of tax evasion. He died while in custody under puzzling circumstances. The list of those responsible for the death of the human rights activist has also been sent to Washington by Russian activists. For several months, the bill has been discussed and has already been approved by the relevant committees within the U.S. Congress. We're hopeful that the Zhanozhen list will gain some kind of judicial power. Those engaged in persecution and repression who are breaking the laws by carrying out the orders of others will at least be travel banned. It is not a secret to anyone that most of our dishonest officials have accounts with international banks, as they prefer not to keep their assets in Kazakhstan. Any official has at least 2 or 3 backup accounts abroad. We want to put an end to this malpractice. Sholpana Tikeva shows pictures of her husband. He was wounded on the square on December 16, 2011. He has undergone 6 surgeries since last year. The doctors had to cut his leg several centimeters short. Sholpan's husband turned into an unemployed handicapped. She can't find a job either. But the thing that worries her the most is that those who are behind Zhanozhen tragedy managed to escape punishment. This is the first time I participated in roundtable talks. I'm under a positive impression. The roundtable was entirely focused on Zhanozhen tragedy, and that is a good thing. I've realized that Zhanozhen residents are not left on their own. I want to thank all those who are concerned with our lives. Deciding whether to stay home or attend the round table was not an easy thing for Sholpan. She was the only one of Zhanozhen residents who managed to overcome her fear. A 2-day trip to Almaty raised her spirits. Now Sholpan is returning to her hometown with positive feelings. She's looking forward on sharing the good news with other Zhanozhen residents, the news that most probably they won't be ignored. In conclusion, a story about Kazakhstan citizens' material problems related to housing, mortgage, shared construction, and other attributes of the notorious housing problem. According to official statistics, 150,000 people in Kazakhstan are awaiting the speedy resolution of the problem. The housing problem of Kazakhstan government is the most boasted and the most unrealized program. This past week, we've tried to find out why is this happening in Almaty. In my opinion, there are no housing programs in Kazakhstan. The MPs, politicians and government officials discussed a new state program called Affordable Housing 2020 this week at the National Library. The officials speaking highly of the state program rather resembled the business negotiations. Whether construction companies take 20 or 80%, the President Nursultan Nazarbayev always talks about the necessity of improving the social welfare. However, this is only possible by means of income. If you have the money, then the state will take care of you. If there is none, then you have to take care of yourself. Kairat Usenov is a construction worker with 15 years of experience. Along with his crew, they have built a few dozen major facilities in the capital. Last 18 months he's been involved with construction of luxury cottage camp in Astana. According to Kairat, he won't be able to afford this kind of housing even in a shell and core fit-out. $500,000 for the rough masonry alone, not including the finishing work. For the blue-collar workers like us, this is simply beyond our comprehension. Our income is not good enough to afford buying something like this. Perhaps this is only affordable to the MPs. Construction worker Usenov, who builds luxury housing, has been living with his family in a 23-square-meter room for 12 years. His living conditions stand in stark contrast with what he builds. Moreover, for the last few months, the Usenov's family lived in fear of losing their sole living space. The government is trying to seize land of dormitories for construction of strategic facility of heating power plant 3, while the Usenovs, along with other 40 families, face the eviction unless they agree on accepting compensation. The city administration offers a compensation of $23,000, but this amount won't let buy anything. Dissenting the authorities' decision, the construction worker has already participated in a public rally in front of Astana City Administration office in late September, which caused the city authorities to withdraw their petition from the court for compulsory eviction. Pickets and rallies, you name it, we'll stand up for ourselves. We will picket outside the Nuratan building. We'll be putting effort and try to come up with something anyway. This is a creative idea of solving the housing problems by the youth wing of the ruling Nuratan party. The Happy Family project sails away on this ship. The project is part of the Society of Universal Labor idea proposed by Nursultan Nazarbayev. The idea is to establish small labor camps which would allow anyone to buy an apartment with furniture and appliances for $1,200 per square meter upon completion of 100 hours of work on the construction site. For instance, the apartment you want to buy costs $50,000. You will have to work after 100 hours to buy it. If you look at the market, this price for one-room apartment with the finishing and furniture is essentially lower. Yet we also offer the following. Let's say the person has $5,000, the 10% of the total cost, and then he could invest it and sign a contract to ensure that the apartment he wants will not be sold to a third party or anyone else. This apartment will be assigned to you and you'll be saving up the money during the construction. It's interesting that Ayjan Utiova is a member of the Coalition of Universal Labor, but also the director of the private real estate agency. The return of funds mechanism in this scheme is very similar to a regular mortgage or equity construction. For instance, if you manage to save up the remaining $45,000 in 2 years, that is great. However, this is still a lot. You'll have to pay off about $1,300 per month, whereas many people cannot afford it due to low salaries, and it is maximum maturity of 2 years. The head of the Union of Patriotic Youth, Mohammed Abjan, is very skeptical and doubtful about the proposed scheme. Frankly speaking, I have no hopes of saving up enough money to even buy an apartment in Astana. Therefore, I'm considering an option of private housing construction. Since 2000, Abjan and his family have been renting apartments. They tried to receive housing under the state program as a young family. Mandatory condition for the couples is not to be older than 29 and to have 2 children. My wife and I applied for the latest public housing program, but at the time technically we only had 1 child. My wife was pregnant with a 2nd child back then and our application got rejected. Nevertheless, we were hoping for the next year program, but looks like we're not going to qualify for it because I will be 30 years old by then. Based on personal experience, Mohammed Abjan is trying to attract the attention of legislators to raise age limit for young people, so that it would be still possible to apply for the housing program at the age of 30. However, he had no luck in reaching the MPs. The initiatives at the bottom don't seem to be heard by the people on top. I believe it is wrong to provide a free housing for 25-year-old grown men. No country in the world does that. Instead, the mechanisms of affordable housing need to be introduced. Enormous funds were invested into the new building of the National Library along with other construction projects in Astana. While solving the housing problem for 150 citizens of Kazakhstan in need of housing might require much less resources, says the human rights activist Balatbek Blyalov. He suggests allocating the free land for the individual construction and splitting the cost of building utilities between the state and private traders. During the program review, the experts of Samruk-Kazana Club didn't reach a common ground. The value of Affordable Housing 2020 project is over $1.6 billion. Head of the Foundation for Development of Parliamentarianism is convicted that these funds will be looted again. Until the corruption within the system of housing allocation and distribution is fully eliminated, this is not going to happen, while the eradication is only possible with the involvement of media and public organizations, when it will be open and transparent. During the years of independence, there were 3 programs introduced on housing alone, and none of them has been implemented. Therefore, I believe this one is not an exception. The steamship called the Happy Family sailed away back in September. Have there been more of happy families in Kazakhstan is rather a rhetorical question. You were watching Vlast KZ on KPLUS channel, trends, highlights and personalities of the past week. Goodbye.